Hey up everyone! In the world of motorcycling there are always plenty of big bikes that the manufacturers are all too ready to sell to us, but power and size aren't everything. Some of the most legendary bikes earned their place in history not through brute force, but through a perfect blend of performance, affordability and innovation. This video celebrates 11 of these motorcycles. Small but mighty legends that punched well above their weight class, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of riders everywhere. It's a list that was bound to be dominated by two-strokes, but we do have an honorary four-stroke in there, and from agile street bikes to heroes of the dirt bike world, these motorcycles prove that greatness comes in many sizes. I will start with the more obvious choices and gradually work towards the more unusual and rare choices, and hopefully you will appreciate why I've included each of the bikes. A quick reminder too, try and remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Sharing the video anywhere you think people will be interested helps us a lot too. But before I go on, I have to say a big thanks for all the support, and especially to the BAREBONESMC family on the Ko-fi group. You can find more videos there and on the Rumble channel, as well as on the backup channel on here, and the blogs on the website, so why not go and take a look. But for now, grab a cuppa and buckle up for this trip into the smaller end of the motorcycle market of yesteryear. First and most obvious choice today is a bike I talked about in the introduction of the first Dangerous Bikes videos I will link at the end. The Yamaha 350LC, often referred to simply as the LC, was a game changer when it arrived. This lightweight two-stroke twin offered riders an exhilarating experience that belied the size of its engine. In a world where the fast bike scene was dominated by the new Big Fours, the expensive Italian Exotica and the Kawasaki Triples, the LC was just a breath of fresh air with a hint of Castrol R. The RD350LC's performance was legendary from the start, but got more usable with the second-gen power valve version. It first arrived in 1980 with 47 horsepower, which might not sound too much, but dry weight was just 143 kilos, so each one of those 47 horses went a long way, and the tuners loved them. By 1983, power was up to around 52 horsepower on the standard YPVS bikes, but weight was above 155 kilos dry, so top speed was similar, but the Gen 2 just won on acceleration. 1984 saw the introduction of the RD350F, which pulled closer to 60 horsepower, and Yamaha had also got the weight back down, so quarter-mile times were down and top speed was up, and the first final version of the F2 would produce around 63 horsepower stock. It was so popular that 2 years after Yamaha had axed it from the range in '88, the Yamaha boys in Brazil decided to start again and build a new RZ350 or RD350R using the last of the F2 parts. Sadly, the writing was on the wall for the two-strokes, and the last of the RD350LCs rolled out of Brazil in 1992. The bike had nimble handling and sharp responsive steering that made it a true pocket rocket on the road. But another thing that cemented it in all our hearts was that it wasn't some overpriced toy. It was affordable for everyone, and ease of maintenance made it a popular choice for many riders. It was light and compact, making it perfect for navigating city streets and twisty back roads, but it still had a comfortable riding position for longer journeys, even for taller riders. The RD350LC's influence extended beyond its own model line, laying the groundwork for all of the race replica two-stroke monsters that followed. The RD350LC democratized speed and brought true race-bred performance to the masses. Today, prices are high, with riders and collectors continuing to celebrate its legacy, and its story is a testament to the fact that small displacement bikes don't have to mean small performance. Next, we have a very different bike that has had just as much impact on the industry. This, for me, was the bike that made the company. That company was KTM, and the bike was the KTM EXC125. KTM had become recognised as world leaders when it came to building lightweight, fast off-road bikes. The KTM EXC125 was to take all that to a whole new level. A potent two-stroke engine with a nimble chassis made it a formidable competitor everywhere it went. The XC125's engine, though small, gave you sharp, snappy power delivery that was ideal for tackling rough terrain. Its lightweight construction made it agile and responsive, and it won many friends in the world of enduro and on the motocross track. Most arrive restricted to around 15 horsepower, but few stay that way. A half-decent one will kick out about 40 horsepower from the crank, and some I dare say even more. That means around 35 horsepower reaches the back wheel if you're lucky, and if you don't think that's enough, go and take a proper tuned one for a spin. Because I was that man. I'd been lucky enough to be invited to a test day where there were bikes from KTM, Yamaha, Kawasaki and Honda, and I decided to go with Kawasaki because I wanted to test the KXF 450. I loved the KXF, but kept hearing the lilting tones of the little two-stroke tearing around and went to ask the guys at KTM if I could test one. They had several models there, and when he wheeled out a 125, I was a little disappointed if I'm honest. He just smiled as he explained it was a race prep bike, so to take my time. From the first takeoff, the EXC was a hoot, and with me in control it was far faster around the tight track than the big 450 had been. It dumped me on my backside more than once, but its weight meant it could tackle lines the big bikes struggled with, and boy did it fly, even with my fat backside on it. The engine was durable too. Yes, I said durable about a KTM and a two-stroke in the same mouthful, but it's true. They will put up with massive amounts of abuse without complaining. KTM had focused on robust engineering for once, so this bike could handle the most difficult off-road terrain. It demonstrated that small displacement enduro bikes could be just as capable and exciting to ride as their bigger brothers, and it helped cement KTM's place at the top of the dirt bike market. Next we travelled to Italy and to a much smaller brand. Once described as the horniest looking, best handling, fastest 125 street bike in the world, the Cagiva Mito will always be remembered by anyone touched by them. Aprilia's AF1 125, which I will come to shortly, was dominating many markets until the Cagiva Mito came along. The Mito 125 arrived with a bang in '89, but it got even better. The 1994 Evo 1 model was designed by Massimo Tamburini just after he had penned the iconic Ducati 916. True, the styling was absolutely amazing, but they were so much more than style. The Mito was the first bike that Valentino Rossi rode in anger, winning the Italian Sports Production Championships in 1994 before setting off on his meteoric rise to the top. Back then, the Mito was just about as cool as any bike got. The 125cc liquid-cooled two-stroke single was initially derived from the Yamaha TDR engine, but by the time the Cagiva race department had breathed on it, it produced around 34 horsepower at 12,000 RPM and 16.9 foot-pounds of torque at around 11,000 RPM. To help keep the engine in that narrow, peaky power band, the early Mito had a 7-speed gearbox, but it could be fragile, so by 1998, when the Evo 2 arrived, they had gone back to a traditional 6-speed box. The engine was light as well as fast. It meant that even with the bodywork and that terrific twin-spar aluminium chassis that would easily handle 3 times the power developed, it weighed just 117 kilos or 258 pounds dry. 40mm inverted Marzocchi forks and a Sachs rear shock meant you got racetrack handling on the road, and with it, a breathtaking and exciting ride. A big 320mm Brembo front disc with a 4-piston caliper also meant it had amazing stopping power. Surprisingly, it's also fairly comfortable for a sports bike, even for a 6-footer like me. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure I would fold up so well these days. It has none of the twitchiness you'd expect from a 125 sports bike either. Where the Mito really scored over its rivals was the usability of that engine. There isn't much power below 3000 RPM as you'd expect, but once you pass that number, the hedges begin to fly by pretty quickly. You can hit 60 miles an hour in around 7 seconds from a standing start, and by the time the engine finds 11,000 RPM in top gear, you should be doing more than 100 miles an hour. The Cagiva Mito could easily be mistaken for its bigger Ducati brother, the 916. It is only the exhaust note and the size that give the game away. It will always be compared to the ever-popular Aprilia RS, but the Mito was an altogether classier act. Next, we go back to the land of the rising sun, and again it's Yamaha who get the glory, with a bike that in many ways is in a class all of its own. The Yamaha TDR250 was an unconventional machine that defied categorization. When it came along in 1988, this quirky dual sport combined the heart of a performance two-stroke with the versatility of a true off-road machine. Its liquid-cooled 249cc parallel twin engine came directly from the TZR250 sports bike. It was well proven and delivered around 45 horsepower. That meant the TDR was equally at home on paved roads and dirt trails. It would even sit on a highway when needed. The TDR250 wasn't just about performance though, it was practical. Its upright riding position gave you a commanding view of the road in towns, and long travel suspension provided comfort and control even on gnarly trails. Its rugged construction ensured durability, and although not a commercial success, the TDR250 earned a cult following among riders who appreciated its unique blend of performance and versatility. Built now, I'm sure it would be the best-selling motorcycle on the planet. But alas, those days are gone, unlikely to return, and good second-hand ones are about as rare as hen's teeth these days. The TDR250 story is a reminder that new ideas don't always translate into mainstream popularity at the time, but the TDR250 left a lasting impression on many riders over the years, and it would be applauded back onto the market by all today. Staying in Japan, we have a bike that has a long and distinguished line of heritage, and it's our honorary 4-stroke today. The Honda CB400 Super 4 is a prime example of Honda's engineering finesse. This inline 4-cylinder motorcycle, though not the most powerful in its class, gained a reputation for its smooth power delivery, refined handling, and exceptional build quality. Descended from the CB400F Supersport, it had the CBX400 and the CB1 in its exalted lineage, so its heritage is unquestionable, and this really was the best of all that those bikes had to offer rolled into one neat little package. Often simply called the SF, the Super 4's engine, despite its modest size, provided clean, linear and predictable power that made it a joy to ride in any conditions. Its balanced chassis and responsive handling made for a glorious riding experience. The CB400 Super 4 was a demonstration that refinement and balance can be just as important as outright power. This was the epitome of the universal Japanese motorcycle, and was made for the rest of the world because we screamed so loudly when the CB1 was announced as a Japanese-only market bike. Even Honda found it hard to ignore. Customer sentiment doesn't always make a difference, but this time it did, and for the next 30 years Honda would keep it in their lineup. Not many bikes will survive the changes in customer demand for that long. Over time, there were many changes, not least being the change to variable valve timing in 1999. The VTEC system was lifted straight out of the VFR 800 and made the CB400 Super 4 even more fun to ride. But even the best things must come to an end, and in 2022, the last Super 4 left the factory. The final NC42E models were dubbed the SF Hyper VTEC Revo, and were only available in Japan, Southeast Asia and Australia as far as I'm aware, but I think the differences were minor. It reminds me of the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I wish more manufacturers would spend more time focused on real engineering developments rather than new flashy paint jobs. If they did, maybe the models would last a little bit longer in the lineup. But I digress. Next, we return to Italy. In 1985, when we got the first glimpse of the new Aprilia AF1 125 Futura, I don't think anyone really believed the hype, but no one could argue with the style. The first generation didn't get to market until 1988. It used the Rotax model V127 two-stroke engine and produced around 27 horsepower, but changes came thick and fast, and before the end of the year, a new Rotax V123 engine producing almost 30 horsepower was being used. At the start of the year, it would reach 158 kilometers an hour, leaving it just short of the 100-mile-an-hour mark. But by the end of the year, it had been pushed to 167 kilometers an hour, passing the 100-mile-an-hour mark with a top speed of around 104 miles an hour straight from the factory. Beyond its engine, the AF1 boasted many advanced features for its time, but it was the single-sided swing arm and the upside-down front forks that stole the show. They just added to the visual appeal of what was already a stylish bike. Aprilia and Rotax pushed everything into the bike, and by the time it was replaced with the RS125, they had it reaching 170 kilometers an hour, or over 105 miles an hour, and there were so many changes even within the same model designation that it was almost impossible to keep track. Aggressive bodywork made it look fast before it even started, and a sporty riding position gave it a real race bike feel. The AF1 125 Futura offered a thrilling rider experience in a small bore package, proving that small capacity sports bikes could be just as exciting as their bigger brothers. The bike was universally praised for its handling by the press, and it was the first stepping stone that would lead Aprilia on to build the now infamous RS125, which I could just as easily have put on the list, but without the AF1, the RS125 may never have existed. So I gave the AF1 125 Futura the place it deserves here. We stay in Italy for a while now, and next we have 4 bikes which I will group together. The Gilera 125KZ from 1986, the 125KK from 1987, the SPO1 from 88 and the SPO2 from 1990 are all very special little bikes spawned by Italy's racing scene. The 125KZ was launched in 1987 and it was a statement of intent. This was the beginning of all-out war in Italy's 125 racing scene. Gilera knew what Aprilia had coming, and the KZ was rushed to market. The engine was already producing around 30 horsepower and got over 25 of that to the back wheel, so the Gilera was fast. Not just fast for a 125, it was more rapid than many 250s of the day. The 125KK used the same engine as the KZ, and the only real difference seems to have been the addition of an extra fuel cell underneath the engine, but that did add some extra weight. The engine was smooth too, with a counter-rotating balance shaft, but it still produced the power. The 125KK was a beast on the track, with acceleration and top-end speed to match anything in its class. The question was, would the Aprilia be faster, and when would it finally arrive? Just a year later, in 1988, Gilera introduced the SP01, marking the next chapter in the 125 story. The SP01 took the raw power of its predecessor up a notch and would produce around 35 horsepower at the crank. Acceleration was only a little better, but at the top end it had almost 10 miles an hour on the earlier bikes. It was a few kilos lighter than the KK2, with an all-new stiffer shopper chassis that looked straight out of Nico Backer's sketchbook. These refinements to the chassis and suspension gave it extra strength and resulted in even sharper handling, making the SP01 hard to beat both on the track and on winding roads. Moving forward to 1990, the SP02 benefited from upside-down front forks, which improved handling stability and rider comfort. So from the groundbreaking 125 KZ and the raw power of the SP01 to the more refined performance of the SP02, they represent a golden era of 125 racing. They were machines built for speed and handling, and they captured the hearts of the people who rode them. They all had exhilarating performance, and they may not have left the indelible mark on the motorcycle world that the Mito and Aprilia did, but they were their equal in many ways. All of the Gileras are more than just motorcycles. They are symbols of an era defined by passion, speed, and a relentless pursuit of engineering excellence. Next, we stay in Italy, but we go back in time and get a little more exotic. You see, even the most serious Italian motorcycle collectors will concede that Parilla are a cult collector's bike. But the Parilla Wildcat 250 is one of those bikes where the end result is just so much more than the sum of its parts. Moto Parilla was founded in 1946 in Milan by Giovanni Parilla. Giovanni created a full-bore thoroughbred 250cc road racer that was soon rivaling the Moto Guzzi in the Italian road racing. In the years that followed, the Parilla-designed engine would become legendary. In 1958, Giovanni travelled to America to race in the 250cc Grand Prix at Daytona. Unknown up until then in the States, the 175cc machine won the 250 Grand Prix by a huge margin, and with scrambles gaining popularity, the American distributors, Cosmopolitan Motors, requested a dirt bike with a full 250cc engine. The Wildcat was the result. A 250cc 4-stroke overhead cam dirt bike that came with the road race engine from the very expensive Parilla Grand Sports model, and it was built strictly for the American market. Power was claimed to be around 30 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, and remember, this is in the days before the two-stroke revolution. The Parilla's main competition in the 250 class was the Triumph, and racing the Wildcat Scramblers against the Triumph Cubs was once described as like stealing candy from a baby. What is it they say? The taste of victory is priceless. So even though the Wildcat cost nearly double what the Triumph Cub cost, it sold pretty well. In '62, the retail price was $729, which, if my calculations are right, would put the price at around $7,000 or £5,270 today before any taxes. For a world-beating handmade motorcycle, that sounds like one hell of a bargain to me, unless I've done my sums wrong, of course. The Wildcats featured suede seats, reverse cone megas, side float bowl 28mm racing Dell'Auto carbs, friction steering dampers, leather straps holding the tank down, and right side shifting as was the norm in Europe at the time. Unfortunately for Parilla, by the mid-1960s the two-strokes arrived. Bultaco, Greaves, Ossa, Husqvarna and CZ made the four-stroke Parilla obsolete. The company was bought by a holding company in 1962, but the new owners went out of business in '67, and the name died there, sadly. Another case of what might have been. Next, we go to a country I am guessing most of you won't expect to see on this list. The Casal Magnum was made in Portugal in 1992 by a company called Metallurgia Casal. On one level it was simply a small displacement moped, but it might well be one of the fastest small displacement mopeds ever made. Metallurgia Casal was founded in 1964 by João Casal, but it was Robert Zipperick, along with the engineers and technical managers from the former Zundap company, who were at its core. These engineers had built world-beating bike engines in Germany, and they had a mission. Portugal, which was Casal's main market, was in trouble economically, so the focus was on cheap, affordable transport. But they did export around 10% of their production, mainly to the UK, the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden. Initially they were successful and the engines were fantastic. In 1980, Jan Nishuis set a 50cc quarter-mile record of 15.26 seconds with a terminal speed of 94.29 kilometers an hour, or 58.5 miles per hour, on a Casal Sparta Plompen. Then, in the early 1970s, they began collaborating with the Dutch company Huvo, and in 1981, Dutch racer Jan Hubert set an unbelievable 50cc speed record of 224 kilometers an hour. That's almost 140 miles an hour, using a Huvo Casal motorcycle. Just imagine that for a moment. 140 miles an hour on a 50cc motorcycle. Casal even entered the 80cc World Motorcycle Championships during the 84 and 85 seasons, achieving some great results, but there were clouds looming. As Portugal's economy improved, there was less demand for mopeds, and as with many other companies, Casal suffered. That finally led to bankruptcy in February of 2000, but it was a slow road. The Casal Magnum was in many ways the last roll of the dice for the company, and released in '92, it was a great bike. The engine was strong for a 50cc bike, and the lightweight twin-beam chassis was straight off the Grand Prix circuit. This little moped defied all expectations. An unassuming bike, it boasted a 6-speed gearbox and a surprisingly potent engine, earning it the title of the fastest 50cc production motorcycle by the international press at the time, and I honestly don't think anyone has made anything faster since. The Magnum's performance was rooted in the solid engineering skills of the team from Zundap and the design expertise of the Dutch engineers at Huvo. Together they pushed the boundaries of what was possible when it came to small engines. While not a commercial success, the Magnum 50 story shouts of the ingenuity and ambition of this small company who dared to challenge the big boys. It showed that passion, innovation and a drive for performance can create something truly remarkable even in the smallest of packages. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, but after stopping motorcycle production in 2000, Metallurgia Casal took on the distribution and servicing of Suzuki products in Portugal, so the name wasn't lost completely. Lastly, we have another family of bikes, and a family of owners who are blessed with the bikes with the best names ever to be given to any motorcycles. Believe it or not, at one time, Hodaka was the off-road bike to own in America. Honda were making a killing, and so suddenly every Japanese motorcycle manufacturer wanted a piece of the pie. The Pacific Basin Trading Company, or PABATCO from Oregon, were looking to trade Oregon's agricultural produce for international goods. They began by importing Yamaguchi 49 and 80cc bikes, but the cutthroat world of motorcycle manufacturing claimed another victim, and Hodaka stepped in to fill the void. PABATCO had dealers screaming for the bikes, and so decided to make their own. As the story goes, the initial sketches were done at the local pub, but they took styling cues from the British-made cotton off-road race bikes of the day. They cobbled together a prototype, put it through its paces, and jetted off to Japan to try and seal the deal with Hodaka, who would not only supply the engines, but would assemble the entire bikes in Japan. And in 1964, the Hodaka Ace was born. The tiny 90cc street-legal bike was lightweight with a high-mounted exhaust and was a demon in the dirt. At the time, the competition was practically non-existent. Harley-Davidson weren't exactly focused on off-roading, and other Japanese imports were clunky in comparison to the Hodaka. The only real alternatives were expensive, heavier, high-maintenance British imports. So Hodaka won hands down. The Ace 90, with its little 8-horsepower engine, punched way above its weight, and with a price tag of just $379, they flew off the shelves. As one Hodaka Super Combat racer put it, there was a feeling that these bikes were designed by people who actually rode them. Racers began modifying their Aces for motocross, trials, harehounds and enduro racing, and the Ace 90s dominated their class in races like the Greenhorn Enduro, the National Trail Bike Championship and the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. In 1968, the Ace 100 came along, with a bigger engine, an extra gear and beefier rear shocks. Sales grew and Hodaka even started supplying engines to other frame builders like the renowned English frame builders Rickman. 1969 saw Hodaka unleash a wave of purpose-built race bikes with names like the Super Rat, the Wombat, the Dirt Squirt and the Combat Wombat, and fastest of all, the Super Combat. Life was good, but as they say, nothing lasts forever. Seeing Hodaka's success, the big Japanese manufacturers decided to enter the off-road world, and Hodaka just couldn't keep pace with the R&D of the Big Four. They didn't give up though. Hodaka released the Thunder Dog and the Road Toad with larger 175 and 250cc engines, but sales were on a downhill slide, and the market they had helped create started to slip away. The final blow came in 1978, when parent company Shell Oils finally pulled the plug on Tobacco. And on that sad note, we reach the end of today's list. As always, I have to stop somewhere. There are many others that could have been on this list, like the Aprilia RS125 and 250, the older rear-cooled RD range, the NSR and RGV race reps, and many, many more. I've already featured some in other videos which will be linked in the description, and all will find their place in time. These particular motorcycles, each with its own unique story and character, all demonstrate that size isn't everything in the world of motorcycling. They highlight the importance of innovation, accessibility, and the pure joy of riding, regardless of the size of the engine. They are a testament to the fact that small can indeed be mighty, and they have all left a lasting impact on the history of motorcycling. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know which bikes you think I should have included in the comments below. Thanks as always to everyone for all the support. Try and remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and sharing the video any way you think people will be interested helps us a lot too. If you'd like to help us stay truly independent, you can make a one-off donation or join our group of monthly subscribers on the Ko-fi link in the description. There you get access to a private group where I share videos I just can't screen on YouTube. Join us on Rumble too. The channel's new, but it already has some great content. And don't forget, we make the best biker t-shirts too. Hundreds of original designs on premium quality t-shirts, graphic print t-shirts and neck gaiters, all available worldwide. Links to the main website and the Redbubble shop are in the description. Have a great week, and always remember, keep your spanners close and your keys even closer. Ride free, everyone!
はい、それではスタートします。みんな結構足芝生乗るんですけど、飛べないんですね。飛べない、結構乗ってます。はい、今スタートで買っているのは、鉄拳50番平田選手です。ワンテン選手です。一方です。2分06秒です。